In this video, we're talking about 10 signs of covert narcissistic abuse within a marriage. The dynamics can show up quite differently when you have been in a relationship for quite some time, you have children, and the relationship might work for a time until it doesn't. And quite often, that is when you commit and start having children and you're locked into the relationship. It's a lot more difficult to leave when you are several kids in and a house and pets and all the things, right? So these are some traits that and some patterns that I have seen in my work with women over the last 6 years. I've worked with them specifically in narcissistic abusive relationships and marriages, long-term marriages. And these are things that I saw that were prevalent in every single one of them. Pretty much all of these traits would check out, or the patterns rather. Number one is that everything is fine until you raise an issue, until you have a problem with their behavior, until you speak up about a need or a boundary or something that you don't like about what they did. And you might find that they're supportive in some points of the relationship and not in others. And so when you bring up something about a need or a want or something that they have said or that they've done that you have a problem with, this is where you are often gaslit, told you're making too much of a deal of things, that you're making making drama, or you're too sensitive, or you took it wrong, whatever. And so the thing here is that women will say everything's fine until I bring up an issue. And so what happens is that women begin to, over time, silence themselves. And so they're in these long-term, decades-long marriages where they just feel like I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't. If I bring it up, it's a big blowout. If I don't bring it up, then I've got all this chaos and stress and anxiety going on within myself, and they have nowhere to put that anxiety. Number two is that you can't express yourself without your spouse becoming combative, aggressive, and defensive. And then the issues that you raise turn into a circular argument that goes nowhere except leaving you exhausted, drained, and super frustrated. And then somehow it's all your fault because you raised the issue. Number three is that you're not seen or heard and that you feel invisible to your partner. And there's no reciprocal conversation. Like, how was your day? How are you? How did that thing go that you were doing? How's this going that you're working on? There's none of that type of initiation of the conversation to have connection. And they, beyond the very first phase of love bombing, there's really no initiation of making special plans. They're not going to say, hey, I got us tickets for your birthday in 3 months, or I've booked us, we're going to have dinner, next week on Tuesday. Like, they're not taking any initiative to make plans unless you are constantly on them about it, or you feel like you have to beg for the smallest things or the smallest gestures. And he tends to not care about your ideas or your desires and ignores your needs. So even if you were to say, hey, it's been quite a while since we have connected or had a date night, it would mean a lot to me if we could do something, make a plan. And then does he do it, or does it turn into a big crazy making fight, right? The next is that nothing is ever resolved. And so what you will find with these types of men who have high narcissism is that instead of resolving issues, they tend to just act like nothing happened. So there's no sitting down, there's no let's talk about this, or any effort at all for them to hear your perspective or where you're coming from. And so you never feel heard, and it always ends up in a big fight or argument that leaves you feeling emotionally drained. There's no resolution. So you constantly are spinning all of these different scenarios in your head because there's no loops being closed. Nothing's resolved. And like I said, they're very good at just flipping the switch as if nothing happened, and they're acting normal and nice and thoughtful and all of this when you're still upset about the thing that happened maybe the day before. They wake up the next morning expecting you to forget about it as well. There's no affection or reciprocity or deep emotional connection. The only affection that you might see is when they want sexual activity, or it may be just that's the only time that you get their attention. Many women develop an aversion to intimacy with their narcissistic spouses because they don't want to have any intimacy at all. And it's not uncommon for coercion in the intimacy realm to be present in these relationships. So feelings of being pressured, feelings of being shamed or guilty, or as if they're somehow broken or not good enough because they don't have any desire for their partners. But really what it is it's a huge part of that is the relationship. Many women chalk this up to age. You have kids, you're busy, it's work, you're juggling all the things, or hormones, perimenopause, all that. But really it is, about 90% of it is your relationship connection. That is what determines your desire. The next one is you're constantly walking on eggshells. So you worry about his reactions or what he will complain about next, what mood he'll be in when he gets home, if he's going to be irritable and snappy and grumpy and not fun to be around, prickly. So you constantly feel on edge, waiting for something bad to happen, and then dread when they're coming home. You brace yourself even when they're not around. So many women have that anxiety of when they hear the garage door open or they know that their spouse is coming home. They kind of do this bracing, like, because there's going to be something's going to happen. And so you may find yourself just kind of tiptoeing around to prevent those typical things from happening, but something always happens no matter how hard you try. He will never apologize. And sure, they might make apologies that might sound like it, like, oh, I'm sorry that you think that, or I'm sorry that you see it that way. That's not an apology. They really do act as if they do no wrong, right? You'll hear things like, I'm sorry you feel that way, or I'm sorry you think I did that, or I said, I'm sorry, what more do you want? Or I'm sorry that hurt your feelings. I'm sorry if I did that. These are all not apologies. I'm sorry if I did that. It would be much better to hear something like, I'm sorry that what I did made you feel that way. I don't want you to feel that way. And so then they work on it, right? But you're not going to get real apologies and real ownership. And one thing we really have to realize too with this is it's not necessarily about, that's not the root of the issue, is not getting any ownership. It's the fact that their wiring and psychology causes them to act these ways in the first place. So we're not wanting to force ownership out of these men. We're not wanting to force accountability and force apologies. No, this is all lined up with their character and their psychology, right? Healthy people, when they mess up, they want to apologize and make it right with people they love. Think about that. When things are not going well with someone you love and care about, you have a desire to want to repair it. And if you did something that hurt their feelings, you're going to have a motivation to want to repair it and make it right. This is what is missing inside of these relationships. And so you feel like you're constantly fighting for apologies and ownership. When you express yourself, you're met with sighs, eye rolling, and then stonewalling. This is not an occasional thing. This isn't about just they're not knowing what to say or maybe the occasional sigh. This is happening every time you try to discuss relationship issues, bring up the relationship, talk about things that you're not happy with. There's never going to be a good time, and you can never do it how they think you should. You're either too aggressive or you're too angry, or you're coming in when they're trying to have their quiet time, or you're interrupting their television binge time, or they're tired, or what is it now? It's always something with you, right? That kind of energy. It's never, hey, I don't like being disconnected from you. Let's talk about why you're feeling the way that you feel. This doesn't mean that you would expect them to be perfect. No, but this is just the general feeling and why you eventually get to a place where you don't bother talking about anything. He never listens to your concerns or acts busy or doesn't act interested in what you're saying. Often the subjects get changed, or he deflects, minimizes, or belittles your feelings. Apologize for the dogs. He will also make it your fault, as if your ideas are stupid or silly, or just you're in la la land to think that that would work. And so your ideas are never taken seriously or taken to heart or even into consideration. And last, you feel lonely and neglected in your relationship. It's as if you don't exist to them. There's no deeper level of connection or emotional intimacy. So that means that there's no just having a conversation back and forth. There's no talking about deeper subjects or relational subjects or uncomfortable subjects. And so, because that's the case, they're not able to be there for themselves in the emotional realm. Like, they don't often even know what they're feeling. And so, they can't be there to hold any space for your emotions, right? And not that that is their sole job. We need to have other ways to work through our emotions because our partners really aren't there for processing our emotions. Even though I think we tend to want to utilize them for that, that's not what they're best at. We need to be taking self-ownership of our emotional journey, getting the help, getting the clarity, getting the support to understand what we're feeling so that we can take ownership for our part in it and then communicate the aspects that need to be communicated to our partners in a way that is articulate and it's not putting the blame on them. But when you're dealing with a narcissistic spouse with high narcissism, it does not matter how you bring up something. That is another one I didn't include here. Really, I guess I kind of touched on it, but it does not matter how kindly, how much you put it in a sandwich, like, hey, you're good at this, here's the issue, but I love you, right? Those, the communication tactics of speaking from the first person. I feel this and I feel that. Well, I feel this too. I feel you do that as well. I have an issue with you here, and you did this last week, and you did this 10 years ago. Doesn't matter how you bring it up. And it will often be said that you're being angry or aggressive or can't be around you when you're like that. I can't listen to you when you're angry, right? There's no good time, good way, or good tone to use because it's not going to matter and you're still going to continue to not have your needs met and not feel heard. So if this is helpful for you, I do have a program that is 30 days that you go in from day 1 to day 30 and you implement the process to get clarity, to get the confidence, conviction, and a plan to decide your next steps, whether it is to work on some things while you're in the relationship or to plan your way out. My End the Cycle program walks you through the whole process. The link to join that program is in the description of this video. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos, and I'll see you in the next one.